Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have full review of the 11-inch iPad Air with the M2 processor. Let's get started. Remember that this is sort of the mid-range of the iPad because at the very bottom we'll find the iPad and iPad mini, then iPad Air, and at the very top the iPad Pro. In this case, the most basic version has 128 gigabytes of storage and its launch price in Mexico is 12,999 pesos. That's more or less $660 at today's exchange rate, but remember that prices here are not the same as over there. It is also available in a larger 13-inch size, which will obviously be more expensive, specifically 17,499 pesos. And it should be noted that in this case, it does not include an Apple Pencil, but must be purchased separately. You can buy the Apple Pencil Pro, which is priced at 2,499 pesos, or it can be the Apple Pencil with USB-C, which is priced at 1,599 pesos if you don't want to spend that much. But Apple is generally not a brand with which you can take the luxury of not spending so much, since, for example, if you want to buy the keyboard accessory with case to use it as a kind of computer, actually the price is going to rise even more, since this accessory is priced at 5,999 pesos. On screen you were seeing all the reference prices in dollars just to give you an idea, but we are definitely not in front of an economic product. Generally, Apple's strategy for those looking for a budget device is to offer the devices of past generations, so in this case, if you want to save a little, you can possibly purchase the standard iPad in past generations and you will have a very similar experience, although obviously here we will find the latest in terms of power and other things. Let's start by talking about the design, as it is a fairly compact tablet, very aesthetically pleasing. We have a thickness of 6.1 millimeters and weighs 462 grams. In this case, it is built with 100% recycled aluminum. It is available in several colors. So that is a positive point, because normally other brands can offer you tablets in very generic colors. But in this case, we find this edition that is in blue color. It is also in purple, stellar white, and space gray. Although in this case, it should be noted that they do not have any level of water resistance, unlike, for example, some proposals from Samsung that are beginning to approach in price. So if for you it is a priority that has water resistance, here we are not going to find it. With regard to connectivity and ports, like virtually all tablets, it only comes with a USB-C port. Although we are talking about a port that has good speed, it is USB 3.0. Through this port, you can also do a mirrored screen projection, so you can have a projector or a TV showing everything the same as your iPad is showing, and in fact, it also supports a moderator view depending on the applications. For example, from Keynote, you can start your presentation, and on the iPad, you have the moderator view, while on the TV or on the projector, you have the slide as you designed it. So it does support these kinds of features. Of course, you can also project your screen via AirPlay wirelessly, but with AirPlay compatible devices. And while we're on the subject of wireless things, in this case, we're going to find Wi-Fi 6E. So it has a very fast download speed, which can be very useful for downloading applications, games, music, series. All of that is going to download very fast if your internet provider allows it. It also supports Bluetooth 5.3 for good stability with your accessories, and obviously being an Apple product has AirDrop, so you can send and receive files wirelessly to your iPhone or your Mac, all without any complications. The screen is 11 inches on this model. As I repeat, there is another 13-inch edition, but let's focus on this small model. This screen, of course, which is of very good quality, although it is not an OLED panel. So it's not that advanced technologically speaking, but in terms of the viewing experience, it's going to offer us something very advanced. Let's say it's one of the best IPS screens, so it has a good level of contrast without being its strongest point. In fact, it could not even compare to the contrast of the iPhone. The contrast you get on an OLED screen is much higher quality, but it's a good quality screen. The resolution is 2360 by 1640 pixels, so it reaches a pixel density of 264, which for a tablet screen is very good. If we were talking about a cell phone, it's an unsharp screen, but this screen you don't see it that close compared to how close you can see a cell phone. So it's a good quality screen with a close to 3:2 ratio, so you have a good space to work with as well. It's not 100% focused on multimedia content, so for both note-taking and multimedia content you can use this space. It's not a very big tablet, that has to be said, but obviously if you want the cheapest option, you should choose this small option. Its brightness is 500 nits, enough for indoor use. It is not a tablet intended for outdoor use. In fact, although it has a glass that tries to avoid reflections, it is obviously not so advanced and fingerprints can be marked very easily, although it integrates some treatment to avoid it, so in that sense it is a simple screen. But above all, it is simple because it only supports 60 Hz, so it is not a screen capable of showing you very fluid or very advanced movements. And this is a point where specifically the vast majority, if not all other Android tablets in this price range are going to outperform this screen. As for the sound, you'll find stereo speakers scattered on the sides of this iPad. The sound is actually very good. Apple generally always puts a lot of care into the sound, and this will be no exception. It is a sound with good clarity, good power, and good presence of bass frequencies. Let's listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same as listening to it live. But while we talked about it having good speaker quality, the reality of things is that through software, it doesn't look very well complemented. It does not offer us a general system equalizer, which although it has a good quality in the speaker, the reality of things is that through software, it does not look very well complemented. It does not offer us a general system equalizer, which although it has a good quality in the speaker, the reality of things is that through software, it does not look very well complemented. It does not offer us a general system equalizer, which although it has a good quality in the speaker, the reality of things is that through software, it does not look very well complemented. It does not offer us a general system equalizer, which although it has a good quality in the speaker, the reality of things is that it can help those who are specific in their audio tastes. It supports Spanish sound. In conjunction with Apple headphones, we will not find a headphone jack. You need USB-C or dynamic headphones. To channel them, if you want to enjoy a well-realized resolution, you must use Apple headphones. Apple does not integrate codecs like Qualcomm's aptX, nor LDAC, nor LHDC, as we see in other Android tablets. Therefore, if you want high-resolution audio, you must buy headphones of this brand. This iPad comes with 2 built-in microphones. Next, we are going to listen to a test. This is an audio recording made with the built-in microphones of this 11-inch iPad Air. Of course, the microphones will be of very good quality, and these microphones also have a voice isolation mode or full environment pickup, but these modes are only available when you are in a video call. Let's talk about the camera, which is 12 megapixels and is positioned for you to use the iPad horizontally, much like a computer. This camera has f2 0-point aperture, which for video calls is going to work well. Through software, this camera is able to provide good options in any video calling app, not just in Apple's apps, but for example within Zoom and some others. So it has automatic framing that you can enable or disable as you like, all within the control center. So if you move, the image can keep framing you to keep you centered. There is also the option to activate the portrait mode and blur the entire background. It does this with very good quality. Finally, it also has another option to enable reactions. So when it detects that you have a thumbs up or some other gestures, it will trigger a special animation. So they are little details, but they make the experience really very good. The rear camera is also 12 megapixels, but in this case with a slightly brighter lens with f1.8 aperture and autofocus. Obviously, this camera I would only use for scanning documents and the like. It's not generally used for taking pictures, but maybe for taking a picture of a blackboard or something similar, you can take advantage of it. In this case, we are talking about a good quality camera. It should be noted that through the Notes app or in the Files app, you have an option to scan documents easily as well. So I think the camera serves its purpose. We would not need an additional camera as we find it on the iPad Pro, for example. So there's not much more to say about it. In this case, this camera is capable of recording in 4K up to 60 frames per second, but I insist it is not something you are going to do every day with your tablet. The front camera only gives us full HD signal, so there would be an important difference to note. Let's talk now about the software of this iPad. Remember that it comes with iPad OS 17, and in fact the manufacturer offers a super extended update policy, although it has not communicated so specifically for this model, but it can be more than 5 years. So no problem, it's an iPad that's going to hold its own with good software features. In fact, as you can see, an update is already available, although this is a minor update. However, when you get iPadOS 18, you're going to get, for example, Apple Intelligence, improved Siri, handwriting correction, live transcription of your recordings, a very advanced calculator. So that's just one example of how Apple panders quite a bit to its devices with respect to the updates that it sends out. But for now, let me tell you about some software features that you might find useful on this iPad. Remember that at the bottom we find an app dock. In fact, we can now access the entire library of applications directly from this same dock. Obviously, if we are inside some application, the dock is hidden, but we can show it again with a simple gesture, and from here we can quickly open some other application. In fact, we can press and hold on some icon to be able to open this application in a floating window mode or also in a split screen mode, depending on your taste. In addition, when you are in split screen, obviously you can also adjust the space you give to each of these applications, and at the top there are these three little dots to change the view to a floating view. So we have very good options when multitasking, although possibly not as advanced as the multitasking that you would achieve, for example, in Samsung tablets, since note that in this case it will not allow us to specifically resize any application, but combining this floating view with the split screen view, we could get to have several applications running at the same time. And in fact, for that, Apple has enabled something called Stage Manager, through which you can see how applications will be distributed differently. For example, a small view appears on the side that will organize our windows in some way. And in this case, we are going to be able to try to resize these windows, since we can also introduce new applications here. So we can have some combined windows and observe how this view is going to try to arrange these windows. In this case, yes, we can have some application on top of another one, and we can switch between various sets of applications in a much faster way. So it's an interesting software feature, although I personally like the Samsung DeX implementation much better. I consider it to be much more advanced, but either way, it's a nice way to elevate the level of multitasking on an iPad. Another relatively new feature of the iPad is the freeform application, through which we will have an infinite canvas on all sides. So in conjunction with the Apple Pencil, which is sold separately, we are going to be able to have a lot of space to draw. That's one of the benefits of this application, which obviously for mind mapping, for example, would allow you to have a completely infinite canvas, and then you can zoom in on everything that you've put. And since we are talking about the Apple Pencil, obviously we will find in this Apple Pencil Pro version also the gesture to pinch on this pencil, and then have some other tools available. In fact, this Apple Pencil has an optical motor that generates a small vibration as a stroke format to be able to interact with the pencil. So it really is a very advanced stylus that also integrates a twist detection as well. Notice how I can give you a preview of what the stroke would look like. So I can make a straight line, or if I draw, I can make a much thicker line. It all depends on how I place the twist of the stylus. So really, Apple currently has possibly the most advanced stylus experience that I've seen because of all these features that it integrates. Obviously, through this freeform application, you can also find some special figures. The truth is that, as I say, for mind maps, for example, it would be a super good solution. It has many categories, even a search engine for all these shapes that you can insert quickly, or you can insert images from your camera or scan a document. Anyway, for students, it can be a useful tool if you are this kind of student who likes mind maps a lot. Personally, I never liked mind maps, but I find this application very good for that. And obviously, one of the benefits of the iPad is that it comes with free applications such as Keynote to make PowerPoint-style presentations. I was already anticipating that if you're doing a presentation with a connected screen, we're going to find the moderator view available here as well. And if you have an Apple Pencil, you can also annotate your presentation in real time. Obviously, there will also be Pages, which is the alternative to Word, a thoroughly good text editor. So, in a way, you would save yourself a Microsoft 365 subscription, to give you an example, because with these apps, you have everything you need to edit your documents. Similarly, there are Numbers. These types of applications I always highlight because we usually get the impression that Apple tends to charge for everything separately. And it is true that there are many things that it charges you, but at least these applications are completely free and come included. Just like GarageBand, Clips, iMovie in short, it's a device that allows you to create various things from school documents to more advanced things like a video or music. Now, the lock screen has also gained a very good level of customization. You simply have to unlock first through your fingerprint. Note that it is now possible to add widgets on this lock screen. So, you can have a quick look at the calendar, some other settings, battery information of your different devices, and even shortcuts to third-party apps depending on how you set up your app. So it can become a useful tool as well to have various shortcuts directly on our lock screen without the need to access any app. And something that Apple has wanted to emphasize in this generation is that it has animated backgrounds for the lock screen. Notice that it has a very large suite with different categories to select the wallpaper that you like. We even found these emojis, so it is really interesting. You can in this part select the list of emojis that you want to appear to generate this background. So the level of customization that is achieved today is quite nice. And in fact, you can have other styles as well, watch, so you can have a very customized experience to your liking on the iPad. Another new feature that the iPad brings is automatic form filling in PDF files. Normally one sees these features within the web browser, but now Apple has moved it to PDFs. I downloaded a sample PDF just as a form and note that the auto form fill option appears here. The first time you fill in, obviously you're going to put in your correct information, and the next time you have to fill out a PDF, the option to autofill all this stuff that's available will appear. Remember, if you hold down the side button, you can quickly access Siri, which is going to get smarter soon. And also let me tell you that in PDF files, you can also do some annotation on top with the stylus. And by the way, the stylus has a super good response, very smooth. And it can distinguish whether you have your hand on top of it or you're just painting with the pen, so it doesn't get confused and you can write comfortably. By the way, with this pen, you could also write directly in text fields. Watch how quickly it does the transcription, and you can do the search or any other kind of writing. So the iPad software, the truth is that it is at a very good level. The iPad always tends to be the protagonist within the tablets, especially for the quality that we find in their applications. Although do not believe that all iPad applications are perfectly optimized. Just open Instagram to realize how ugly it can get to look a poorly optimized application on the iPad. As for security, we'll find this side fingerprint reader that supports 5 registrations so you can register multiple fingers or trusted people. It doesn't have a smart unlock, unlike the vast majority of Android tablets, which are going to allow you to stay unlocked by being in a trusted location. So that might be a little bit more awkward. Obviously, that fingerprint reader is also going to be useful for us to be able to access our passwords and fill out forms automatically. Although a password application is going to be available soon that is going to be able to sync not only with Mac computers but even with Windows, but that will come with an update. However, it does not offer us a child mode or secure folder or a private VPN. So there are still several tools they could add in future updates, especially knowing what some other Android manufacturers may be able to offer you. In that sense, Apple still doesn't offer us such an advanced experience. Although, if you happen to lose your iPad, you do have a very advanced feature, which is to find your device connecting to the entire Apple network, even if it has no internet connection. Let's talk about the battery now, because its capacity is an unknown figure. For some reason, Apple does not share the official figure, but in my test, it was able to give me 2 hours of very intense use. I want to emphasize very intense because it's a usage that could only be equated to playing extremely high-resolution games at maximum quality. On the contrary, it did another much simpler test, which was just playing full HD videos from YouTube, and that gave me almost 5.5 hours with the screen at maximum brightness. So in general, we could say that it has an average duration, like other tablets or other iPads. In that sense, it's not spectacular, but it doesn't disappoint either. Obviously, it has a battery saving mode that you could take advantage of in case of very long days. And something curious is that in this battery condition section, it is able to tell you the number of charge cycles you are using. If you buy a used iPad, it's important that this number of cycles is as low as possible. Of course, as time goes on, this number will increase and the maximum capacity will decrease. This is useful information if you are buying a used iPad. Obviously, if you're buying a new iPad, this should be at 100% and the number of cycles should be at 0. And something that can help you protect the battery from further wear and tear or degradation is to limit the charge to 80%. Obviously, that will give you less battery life, but it can help you keep the battery from degrading easily over the years. A 20-watt charger is included in the box, and that's the one I tested with. In 15 minutes, it recovered 13% of battery. In 30 minutes, it reached 25%, and the full charge was completed in 2 hours and 35 minutes. In that sense, the experience is the ugliest I've seen lately on a tablet. You should be very aware that on Android you will find tablets that charge very fast, but in this case the charging is actually quite slow. It must be very patient, and I think that's one of its weakest points. To talk about the performance of this iPad, let's open Safari and notice that there are several tabs that are already opening around here because I had them loaded previously, and I want you to see the speed in terms of loading all this content. I find that to be a good experience. Several applications, it's convenient to run them from the browser so that they have a more tailored view. For example, as you saw a moment ago, Instagram looks terrible in the app and it still suggests us to open the app, but it's much better to open the browser. So we're looking at several apps here as I'm telling you, and they all open quite easily. In this case, it has 8 GB of RAM, which is apparently well managed. Notice that I have several tabs open in the web browser and we haven't seen any restarts yet. Let's open some other applications now so you can see for yourself more or less how fast this iPad can get. We're definitely going to have a lot of power in that regard. In fact, I would say it's got power to spare. Believe me, the vast majority of people don't need all the power that this iPad is capable of giving you. However, it is available. Obviously, the maximum power you're going to be able to take advantage of in games or in applications that require very advanced rendering. But as I say, for the vast majority of people, the performance that can reach this iPad is more than enough. Notice that I'm switching between several applications. All of them work perfectly. In case you didn't know, I remind you that with this 4-finger gesture, you can easily switch from one application to another. That really seems like a small detail, but it helps you a lot when you are working. In fact, you can also load the list of recent applications with this other gesture. And we go back to the browser just to show you how there are no restarts on these pages that were already loaded. So you manage these 8 GB of RAM perfectly well, as long as you don't suspend for a moment your iPad. Because believe me, if you put it to sleep for a moment, it is likely that when you come back, several of the applications are restarting because of the way Apple works multitasking. However, for some reason, when I record video, that never happens, and when I'm using the iPad, I always happen to see app restarts. So it's very curious how Apple manages background apps. But the truth of the matter is that you have very good performance on this device. Now let's do our traditional test of exporting a video with a total duration of 1 minute. This will be a 4K test. Let's see how it does after this whole process, and that's it. It took 33 seconds. I have to say it's not the most powerful tablet I've seen, especially in this price range. Possibly if you're going to find other more powerful tablets on Android that come with Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, for example. That was using CapCut though. Let's do the same test but now from iMovie. And I remind you that you could also install Final Cut for iPad, having an exaggeratedly professional video editor. So while it may not be the most powerful tablet, having Final Cut does endow it with much more advanced capabilities when editing a video. So let's set it to export so we can see roughly how long it takes. That's where it's starting, and I'll let you know when it's done. It even took a little bit longer. So it's definitely not the iPad or the most powerful tablet for video editing, talking specifically about raw power. And finally, in this performance section, I tell you that it has 128 GB of storage that could become very short for some users. Note that in this case, installing heavy games, I practically managed to fill this iPad. The 256 GB edition is available, but it will obviously be more expensive. Although it would be the most advisable considering that you can't put a micro SD card to expand the storage. Let's go to the games section. You should know that with the next update, you will have more software features focused on games. For now, there is nothing more than enabling the Do Not Disturb mode. In Call of Duty, by default, it gives us the very high quality at a high frame rate. However, we can go up to the maximum graphics quality, and we can also go up to the maximum frame rate, although the graphics quality is reduced. Notice that when we give preference to the maximum graphic quality, virtually all effects are available available and we can enable them in real time. So definitely the graphic compatibility is quite good. Although I repeat that it does not allow us the maximum frames per second rate. So with this we were able to see 40 frames per second on average practically all the time with a stability that we could say is perfect. There's no jitter. It really gets to take tremendous advantage of the power of this processor. This game is still pretty simple for the processor that this iPad has. The detail here is that the screen is 60 Hz, so it doesn't give such a fluid feeling in games that are better optimized, especially having tested other tablets and other devices that mostly have 90 Hz or more. In the SpongeBob game, by default it is on high resolution and high quality, but for the test we turned it up to epic. And the performance was again practically perfect. 60 frames per second with a lot of stability. We could practically say that it didn't have a single low peak. The lowest it got was 58 frames per second, so it really is a very good gaming device. Just consider that you're going to connect a gamepad to it for more comfortable play, because obviously playing without a gamepad can be a little bit more uncomfortable for a lot of people. We then played Season's Creed, a game that has just recently arrived on the iPad. By default, it gives us the normal graphics quality. We had never tried it, so we ventured to place the high graphics quality. And we must say that this game is much more complex. It's practically a game that we could say is designed for consoles and PC. So it is definitely a rather complicated game for this device. It had an average of 24 frames per second and it had several fluctuations. So we could say that the proper thing to do would have been to play it in high graphics quality. However, it is a demonstration of how Apple is putting a good effort into bringing various console or computer quality games to this device. Remember that it supports ray tracing and other advanced features in order to offer you very realistic graphics in all these contents. Although I repeat that in this case could not have such a smooth execution, and in fact the temperature reached 44 degrees Celsius on the outside, and that in a tablet the truth is that it is quite high. Then we played Resident Evil. In this game by default it has balanced graphics. In this case we prioritized the graphics for a much more advanced and demanding test for this device. In fact, it also allows us to adjust the screen resolution, and it was on a low resolution, but we turned it up to as high as possible, which again is quite a demanding test. And finally note that it also has blur and depth of field enabled. Interestingly, when recording the screen in this game, it seems to lower the brightness of the screen. This is due to the HDR graphics adaptation, which in screen recording does not register. So specifically recording gameplays of this game is not recommended because the video is seen with an exaggeratedly low brightness. But we note that we stopped recording the screen simply so that you yourself can more or less witness the graphics that we find in this game. And the truth is that they are spectacular in terms of reflections, textures, water and other things. The truth is that these are features that we had not normally seen in tablet games. Although in this case you obviously do not see an exaggeratedly fluid response when you are playing, you yourself are seeing how you can get to have certain delays and more. But I think it is an excellent advance and progress. Notice for example how here there is some water on the ground and the reflections look exaggeratedly beautiful. Also at the top it looks super realistic gameplay. So I insist that it is a very good evolution to bring console graphics to an exaggeratedly portable and thin device. So there is no doubt that Apple is on the right track to adapt all games. Obviously this is also going to be transferred to the Mac, which until now was a device that did not have a good catalog of games, but it looks like that could change very soon. Lastly, in Genshin Impact is the default high graphics quality. We turned it up to very high, and we also turned it up to about 120 frames per second, which is a pretty complex test. Although we couldn't really display 120 frames per second on this 60 Hz screen, but just for the sake of testing we did it this way, and in this case it obviously did not exceed 60 frames per second. We don't know if it was because of the warming up due to the previous games or because of the limitations of the screen itself. But the truth of the case is that a minute and a half or so after starting to play, you can see that the average starts to drop and there are many more fluctuations. In this case, I think we must also take into account that it had already warmed up a lot due to the previous games that we had configured in exaggeratedly high graphic qualities. Genshin Impact is a game that still has an acceptable graphic quality for this iPad, that it's going to be able to run it without any problem. But the previous games do represent a fairly intense load for the Apple M2. They are much more focused and optimized for processors like the M4 or M3. But in this case, we do not find Apple's most advanced processor. So the heating can become intense in the previous games that I told you about. And that will cause the iPad to slow down its overall performance. Anyway, you are seeing that even recording the screen in Genshin Impact, the performance was pretty good. So if you want a gaming device, this could be a good option. As long as you choose the graphics quality adapted to this device, especially in the heavier content. For now, we have come to the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can let us know. And we'll see you next time.